Hello, everybody. Welcome to TL's Roadhouse. On the couch, Connor Smith.
What's up, man?
Good to see you, man.
Happy to be here.
Looking forward to getting to know you a little bit, man.
I know this will be fun. I'm on your bus, and I'm honored to be here. So,
Well, thank you very much
thanks for having us.
So, it seems like there's a new trend of people that are in the music business that are actually from the Nashville or greater Nashville area, man.
Hey, we're coming up, dude. It's fun to see. We got Mitchell, we got Ernest, we got Jelly Roll, and then we got me, and it's funny. We're kind of a little community, like especially Aaron and Jelly Roll. They kind of got my back, and we'll kind of, I feel like those two guys would fight for me just because I'm from Nashville. So it's cool to have the 615 boys winning right now.
That's pretty cool, man.
I felt like we had for about a decade. Everybody was from Georgia. So maybe,
yeah, we've had our turn with that, man.
Totally,
And before that, it was from Texas. I know when I first started, man, my piano player was originally from Nashville. His first road gig was with George Jones when he was 19. And then my lead guitar, Darren Favorite. I don't know if you know Darren. Yeah. Darren played with me for a long time. Darren's a Nashville native. So there's a few guys floating around, man.
Yeah, man, I think, for me, so much of my story is just growing up in Nashville. I was around the creativity of this town.
Yeah.
And I learned so early that you could write songs for a living. And I was like, well, I want to do that. You know what I mean?
So what's your family background? I know you're from Brentwood. What's your mom and dad do?
Yes, I was born in Chattanooga, and all my family's from there. And then we moved to Nashville when I was about 5. My dad works in healthcare, so we just moved up here. And then my mom worked as a TV reporter, so she got a job at the Channel 4 station here in Nashville, and loved country music. So she would kind of raise her hand for all the country music gigs, the red carpets and the number one parties and all that. And so I would start going around to the number one parties and different things with her. And she was interviewing a lot of songwriters. So she'd interview Craig Wiseman or Neil Thrasher or Kelly Lovelace or Rivers Rutherford, these massive songwriters. And so I would go with her and I would watch the long form interviews. So it's 2 hours of Craig Wiseman talking about how he wrote, Live Like You Were Dying, or There Goes My Life for Neil, or so all those. So I soaked it up, man. I'm 6, 7 years old at the time, and it was immediately I started writing songs, started taking guitar lessons, and from the age of 8, you could have asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I would have told you a songwriter.
That's really awesome, man. To know and identify that at a young age is very rare, man.
It is, man. It's such a leg up, and it's funny. Everybody says Nashville's a 10-year town. It's like what. I started writing songs at 16. I signed my publishing deal at 16. I started writing songs at 6. Signed my publishing deal at 16.
No kidding, man.
And so it kind of maps out to 10 years.
So how did you learn structure? Did you just kind of decipher things that you heard on the radio and things that did you write them down and break them up into categories? I mean, how did you learn structure?
I don't know, man. I always feel like my story is one of having a God-given ability to do something, but then put in the perfect environment to foster it. So there was always some sort of concept of structure, of a verse, a chorus, a bridge.
Did you do poetry too, with write verse without music?
Not really. It was all just, and I didn't know how to play guitar at the time, so I would just strum that thing, and it sounded like gold. But I signed to BMI when I was 9 years old, and it's just this crazy story. Clay Bradley heard a story about me, asked me to come in. And he's the head of BMI now, but he was kind of the head of artist relationships. At the time, I came in, I played 3 songs for him, and he said, Connor, these songs are better than half the people we have signed here. And
you were 9.
9 years old, and there was nothing about these songs that were good or that, whatever, get cut by any means, but they had structure. And you could tell I knew something what I was doing, and so it was little moments like that really kind of, because at 9 years old, you get signed to BMI, which anybody in this room could go get signed to BMI right now. But as a 9-year-old, I'm like, I made it.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? And so it's little moments like that really stamped, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. That's fascinating to me. So you picked up the guitar and you're single digits, man, 6 or 7 years old, started doing all that stuff?
Yeah, I started playing about 7. We had a guy come over to the house and take guitar lessons with my older brother. And I always tried to get real good at guitar. And I'm good enough. I could impress the average person. I probably couldn't impress you with my guitar ability. But every time I try to learn how to do the scales or whatever, I just started writing a song. So I just mastered about 10 chords, got a capo, and just called it a day.
That's not a bad way to go, man.
So that's kind kind of my story.
So what was one of the titles of those first 3 songs? I want to hear one of the titles.
All right, so we had one of the first songs that I started playing out. I you know Puckett's and Leapers Fork?
Yeah.
That's where I started. So we would go there for Thursday night open mics. Ever since I was 7, we would after school, went to school down in Franklin, Cool Springs area, and then we would drive out to Puckett's on Thursday nights and go play. And one of the first songs I started playing out was a song called Small Town Big Dream Boy. And it was like, I know a boy who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. He always had a bigger dream. Baseball player, football star. Everybody said he was going to go far. He was a small town big dream boy. There ain't nothing wrong with that. He always had a bigger dream for his life. And everybody knew and everybody said he was a small town big dream boy. So that was like the first song I started playing. I was 7, 8. But then a lot of it, I started playing in church, so a lot of it was worship songs.
Yeah.
I really thought till about 13 I would, write worship songs and be a Christian artist. And really what that was I wasn't bold enough to write a love song yet, so I just wrote love songs to Jesus. And so about 13, I wrote my first love song for a girl, and that's where it all switched.
Wow. So how do you build your imagery in? Do you close your eyes? Do you visualize? There's everybody's got different ways.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never thought about it. What's always drawn me to country music is its story. You know what I mean? It is, you can say something in a song that you can't say in conversation in country music. And I think as songwriters, we just have a way of viewing the world a little bit different. And it's just the little nuances. It's, any sort of creative, any sort of poet or writer, I think you try to look for the things that are so relatable, yet they're never said. And so I've always felt this level of depth to kind of the way I viewed the world. And I've always tried to put that in my music. And so that's where, as I become an artist and I look at who do I want to be as an artist, I try to be intentional that every song says something. It means something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you studied guys like Christopherson and Dylan to look at how they put things together? Because it's fascinating that a guy like Chris wrote some amazing things, and they were all from life experience, man. He kind of got down and wallowed in the word.
Totally.
He did.
Totally. And 100%, I am just a student of songwriters, and, Tom Douglas's or Bobby Braddock, these guys they were just true poets. And it was such a different formula, and I feel convicted as a songwriter sometimes of the way we write songs now has become so formulaic. It's so 11 to 3, 11 to 4.
It's almost predictable, and trying to step out of that and get to that next level where you break away from the predictability as well.
Totally, and putting true grit and depth back into songs. And as a human, I try to do that without necessarily having to go, because Chris Christopherson was writing about real stuff he was dealing with.
Sunday morning coming down. He's in it.
Totally.
He's in it.
And so I have this, battle of not battle, but there's a thought of how do you write from a place of depth like that, but also stay on the straight and narrow when you're out on the road and live your life the right way in a certain sense. You know what I'm saying?
I remember the first time that I got a chance to write with Dean Dillon. Dean Dillon, he's so intimidating a guy because I grew up such a huge fan of Straight, and that body of early Straight songs, a lot of that was Dean Dillon,
all of it.
And it seemed like after he got sober and straightened up, it took him a little bit to find that grit back.
Totally.
Because it's easier to write about heartbreak when your heart's broke. And when you're happy, you don't tend to write those things as 100%. Much. So being able to channel that stuff at will is a craft in itself.
It's such a mystery. I heard a really beautiful song, and it was this guy named Benjamin Hastings, just a brilliant songwriter, and he put out this album, and one of the songs on it was called "A Message to My Wife." It was a 1.5-minute song, but one of the lines in it says, "I don't know how to." It's basically saying in the song, he goes, "I don't know how to justifiably write a song about you because you're the best kind of boring." And I thought as a songwriter it was so brilliant, where he's talking about our relationship is so healthy and it's so good, and you're the best wife and best mom. I don't know how to, perfectly write a song about you that's appealing, because I do think that a lot of songwriters and great artists are tortured souls in a certain sense, and so you'll see that a lot in country music, and definitely back in the day with some of those guys. It's like drawing from. I was listening to a John Mayer interview recently where he talked about a lot of his great songs came from places of heartbreak, and he was saying, I would take those songs away to not have to walk through what I walked through, and I think that's true in a lot of times.
But the journey of the tortured soul, man, there's something to be said about it. You know, it's kind of like the dichotomy of a comedian, you know, that goes out there and strives so hard to entertain people, but is so tortured on the other side.
100%.
There's a lot of heartache that goes along with it. You know, I've heard stories about Sonny Throckmorton, man, and you know he'd write all those hits, and he had gold and platinum records all over the house, and he'd just get blistered drunk and shoot up the records in his house. He had bullet holes all in his house. Just the demons that circle around a lot of. I've lived through it.
Totally. I mean, we've all been through it in a certain sense, and I think part of that too is the high of being on a stage, the high of performing.
It's addictive.
It's so addictive, and you can't explain it.
No.
There's nothing that you can manufacture off of that stage that reaches that level. And so there's always going to be, and I try to be really mindful of it, there's always going to be a certain come down after you get off stage. And I think that's where a lot of people will trip up, is in this idea of when they get off a stage and they come down the after show and they're just looking for the next buzz and next rush. Because, like, I don't know if, as humans, we're necessarily designed to be worshipped in that way, that you are on a stage. And so it is, I think that's part of the beauty of the job of, like, we get to put our honest truth into art that people can, like, that can truly change someone's life and change someone's day. And in that, there's great highs and there's great lows, and I think that's the beauty of why we're here on earth, you know, to write songs and to get to perform those and do something that matters.
It's what is the band? There's a rock and roll band. What's that band that I like so much? There was a concert that they did at Hellfest where they're circling. What's
Disturbed?
No, not Disturbed. The other band.
Lamb of God?
No, Limp Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit.
Have you seen the video of Limp Bizkit?
No.
So Fred Durst is on stage. You know, I'm sure you're familiar with. It's just one of those days you don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
You know, and there's this mosh pit that starts circling. There's probably 100,000 people in this place, and it actually looks terrifying. It starts to swirl like it's got a life of its own. To be able to stand on stage and have the power where you can make people do anything you want them to do.
Totally.
Is a terrifying thing, and you know that they're the ones that pushed the Woodstock '99 over the edge. They got blamed for all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Being able to have that much control is a terrifying thing. I've tasted it to some degree. I've had full arenas full of people jump up and down on one leg,
100%.
just stupid stuff, just to see if I can.
Totally.
But it's being able to come down after that and find perspective of it, and be able to keep it in check and balance is a really hard thing to do.
I always say, man, the image I always kind of put in my head is when you're on stage and people hold up their hands in the kind of the pit or the front, and you reach down to touch them and they scream when you touch them. Man, that's what they did for Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, he would walk through the village and they would just try to get a touch of him. And it's like, we're not designed to, you know, we're no different. We put on our britches the same way. And there's a lot of power in that, but also at the same time, if you use that power for good and
I don't think I've ever told anybody this. It was the early '90s, and my career was really rocking. And I remember I was on the phone with my mother, and I told her, I said, I understand how Jesus felt. And she said, what do you mean? You think you're as good as Jesus? I said, no, Mama, that's not what I'm talking about at all. I mean being able to have the power of being able to move a mass amount of people at one time, and it's a pretty powerful thing.
One thing I've in the relationship to kind of Jesus in this industry, one thing I've really tried, because I feel like this business is such a stressful thing in terms of the idea of momentum.
Well, it's idolatry.
It is. Yeah. It's 100%. You know, you're getting glorified, you're getting worshipped. You walk out and you got 20,000 people screaming because they're in the same room as you. Is what it is. But on the terms of like, this business is so centered around momentum, And it's so centered around, like, if you got momentum, you got to go all in and you got to do everything. And it gets so much pressure on an artist. You know, I signed my post at 16. I signed my record deal at 18. I put out songs when I was 20. Well, at 4 years in there to be a professional songwriter. And then overnight, I had like 5 new jobs where I became an artist. I became a performer. I had to go on a radio tour. I had to build relationships with radio. I had to do media. I had to do press. I had to, amp up my social media. I had to like all these things. What started as I just love writing songs and telling stories became something so much bigger. I'm running a multi-million-dollar organization now, with just money that gets invested you as a new artist on a record label. I haven't had my first hit yet. And so, you learn to deal with all those things. And I think you put so much pressure on yourself of building it and making the right decisions and putting out the right songs at the right times. And you put out the best song ever, and then people forgot about it 3 weeks later. So now we need to come. And one thing I see in scriptures where Jesus was so unmoved by momentum, where he would go have a gathering where, 12,000 people would show up. He would go to the next town and he'd have 20,000 people, and he would just leave them there and walk away and go in the woods and stay there for a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just feel like that idea just kind of takes so much weight off me, because someone told me really early on, and it might have been Thomas Rhett, because he's been a massive mentor for me, but he said, what the Lord provides, you don't have to sustain. And I think that's taking such a weight off me, as I'm a new artist and 22 and trying to figure out how to build a career and make this dream I've had since 6 years old become something that'll hopefully provide for my kids one day. To understand, like, hey, I just got to do what I do great, and that's write songs, and that's, perform.
Yeah, and not get so caught up in all the other things, because there is this facade that comes, and then you get encircled by the publicists and the managers and all the stuff. There gets this thing that swirls around. You got to maintain relationships with the people you grew up with family. You got to have all these pieces in place. How do you ground?
Yeah, I mean, that's an ever evolving thing. I've had to fire my crew twice already. You know what I mean? And clean house. Because it's just like, it matters who you put around you, and it matters, who's representing you. I tell my band all the time, I go, the decisions you make tonight at this show, Connor Smith makes those decisions. And that's how the story gets retold. And so putting the right people around me, people that I trust, people that are going to do their great job, people that when I stand on a stage, I don't have to think about anything other than giving the crowd the best night of their lives, because I know they're going to do their jobs. I got 2 guys on the road with me helping that are high school best friends, know me from the start, and just will know what my desires are and my intentions, and going to hold me to that. And then just like leaning on the people that I love. My family's in town, and I'm able to go over there on Sunday nights for dinner, and then just make it. I'm an introvert at heart. I get refilled, by myself, and so making sure that I'm not running myself ragged, and just continuing to go refill with the Lord, and just try to stay, who I know I'm supposed to be.
What's a day on the road like for you? What's your daily routine?
See, I think that's the problem, is that every day's so different. I'm still in the band right now, so we did it. We went on a tour with Thomas Rhett over the summer, and had the bus, and then we're doing a little headlining run, about 15 shows, and so we're back in the van, and sometimes you're driving 11 hours through the night. Sometimes you're waking up at 5 a.m. to go the next day, and so it's like you get one. It'll get showtime, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day, and didn't work out, and feel like crap, and been dipping Zen all day long, and between a Monster and Zen, that's all I've eaten the whole day or had in my mouth. So it's just like, that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, is that routine of just staying consistent to where my body feels good. I can, my voice stays healthy. That's one of the things, man. I'm not good about warming up and shutting it down, and so I'll try to get a workout whenever we're in these towns, and try to just stay consistent about waking up on a reasonable time. I'm not trying to sleep all day, and then shows don't start till about 10, so we'll go on stage about 10 o'clock, and it's been the first run at kind of this headlining thing, and it's been really special to see people showing up. I'm sure that first headlining run, that's a scary thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's all do or die on you,
You doing a lot of colleges?
Yeah.
Pretty much a lot.
Yeah,
of
we're
that
hitting
stuff.
all the college towns. So the tour's called If I Went to College Tour.
So I can tell that you're a very spiritual person. So you're surrounded by lots of indulgences in this business, man. How do you cope with all that?
Yeah, I think go back to kind of the feeling you feel on a stage. There's a power, and there's a level of power that's given to you as an artist. And I make the joke. I go, it's wild what happens in a girl's brain when you stand on an elevated surface with a microphone. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And and I think I just recognize.
that would be a great T-shirt. Sorry.
No, but but I'm just like I recognize that. And I've always felt like there's a bigger purpose to all this thing, and I look at my story, man. I got so many moments. The Lord has been so specific of placing me in the perfect place at the perfect time with the perfect people, and He just has His hand on it. And so I just feel like He's been so faithful to me. I want to be faithful to Him, and I just like living in the peace of knowing that if I'm living the right way, that the Lord's gonna provide when I'm stressed out, because He has every time. But in the indulgences, I just look at the power. You got two options when you're given that power. You can use that power to chase highs and chase girls, and it truly is a wild thing the way girls look at you.
It's an amazing thing that happens when you have a record at the top of the charts.
Totally,
It's crazy, and it's not normal. It's not the way normal people live.
It's such an It's so wild to kind of wrap your head around, but I just recognize for me, like if I've got that power, I want to use it to have meaningful conversations and really make an impact in people's life and be an example for the other people that are in this industry, because we're all dealing with the same thing, man. Every artist, no matter from me to Morgan Wallen, we're all just insecure and trying to find our next hit, and that's what I've learned, that at every level you're never content. There's never a point in your career where you're not where you sold an amount of tickets, so you're like, man, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's like we're all looking for our next hit. We're all looking for the next thing, and it's like, man, I just want to enjoy the ride and
So
be respected.
do you feel like do you want to build a legacy? Is it about leaving something behind?
I think so. I think it's about being respected.
Yeah.
I think it's about being the type of man and type of person that people can look to and just say, man, I respect how he's done this. That's what Thomas Rhett's been for me. The conversations and the honesty I've had with him is he's shown me that it's possible to be a good husband, a good father, and just a good man, and do this thing and have a great career and put your heart into your career and put your heart into your art. And so I think I just want to, when it's all said and done, when everything goes away, whether I have 0 hits or 50 one day, people won't be buying tickets, and that's okay. And so I think it's just about using the platform I have to make an impact where I can.
Do you feel pulled to write more positive songs? Do you ever go to the dark side when you write?
Yeah, totally. I think that's honest.
Yeah.
I mean, so the song that got me a record deal was a song I wrote by myself when I was 18, called Backseat, and it was a song about it was a guy's perspective of losing your virginity, in an honest way of regret. And it was just a song that was real honest and vulnerable, and it said something and it mattered, and it was a song that got me my record deal because it showed everything that I want to be as a songwriter, which is just I want to tell stories and I want it to impact people. And so I think country music's about heartbreak and love and everything in between, and that's what I'm gonna write, man. I'm gonna live my life, and I want to write from an honest place of what I'm living through. And some days are great, and some days feel like the world's crashing around me. And usually those are the days that I get the best songs.
Yeah. I haven't. It's been a long time since I read it, but I read the Left Behind series several years ago until the characters got so convoluted, I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. How do you feel about where we're at? I mean, as a spiritual person in society, how do you feel about where we're at?
Yeah.
I mean, I got a lot of ideas.
Totally. I mean, I think it's a loaded question, but I think we need some hope right now. I think that, and I think you're really starting to see it over the last month of just like
People's eyes are being opened.
People's eyes. I mean, it's dark.
There's a lot of darkness in the world. There's a lot of demonic activity
Totally.
taking place. There's a lot of things that are going on that are really spiritually demonic.
Yeah, I mean, demonic's the
bad.
only word, and,
Yeah.
and I think that I'm a big believer in, it says in the word, it says, in Galatians or Ephesians 6, it says, we do not fight against flesh and blood, we fight against spirit, spirits of the principalities, and I think that's just the truth. I mean, I feel it when you walk into, some of the venues we'll play or whatever. Like, there's just a darkness there, and there's a darkness over just this country as a whole, and it breaks my heart. But I think in darkness, what I always, believe and say is that in the darkest rooms, you have the opportunity to be the brightest light, and it's harder. But man, I just think people need hope, and I think that's the beauty of what we get to do. Because we get to stand on these stages and give people, a night where they can forget about everything, and we can just have, give them joy and give them a break. And that's what I love about getting to sing country music, man. Like, yeah, I'm definitely, strong in my faith and a strong believer that Jesus was who he said he was, but I'm called to write country songs. I'm called to sing country songs, and that's what I'm going to do because that matters to me, man. That,
How do you structure your show? Do you present it a little bit on the praise and worship side? Do you bring your politics or your religion
Not at
into
all,
your
man.
performances?
Not at all. It's just country music, and I think that's what I love about country music too, is that it's very accepting to. And I feel like as country fans have some core values, and part of that's in the Lord, and for the most part, and so there's nothing that's as different. It's just. Like I said, I want my songs to say something, whether it's Creek Will Rise, which is, a song about skinny dipping, or, my first single, Learn From It, which was, just a song that was about mistakes you make, but then that bridge said, it ain't about the mistakes you make, it's the mistakes that make you. Man, we're all just living life. We're all trying to figure this thing out. And my job every time I perform is to give people a party. And I'm gonna entertain them with every ounce of energy I have for an hour and a half, and I'm gonna have them leaving like, damn, when Connor Smith comes into town, we need to go to that show. And so I don't know, it's more about just how I live on, off stage, and I hope that's the same person. But
That's awesome, man. You're pretty cool, man.
thank you,
It's
man.
pretty awesome to hear that kind of stuff.
Hey, appreciate the conversation.
It seems like, and I was talking with Ernest a while back about this. The language that you've grown up with as a songwriter, as far as the vocabulary and the words that are in society, there's a lot of language out there now that wasn't part of our vocabulary when I came up.
What you mean?
Like cell phones, like woke, like different terminologies. There's so much stuff in the vernacular of our society now that was not even part of conversation, 20 years ago.
Totally.
How do you weave some of that stuff into your songs? Do you make a conscious effort of it? Have you thought about it at all?
Sometimes. I mean, it's funny you say that. I recently, it was a Kelsey Ballerini song she just put out where she used the word Instagram in it. And it was the first time I had heard Instagram used in a song that didn't sound cheesy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of how vocabulary works, where like you'll put kind of new words in there and they just sound cheesy. And then at some point it becomes so in our vocabulary that it just works. And so there's definitely not a conscious effort on my part, but I'm also 22, and that's kind of the beauty of starting early and going, if I went to college, toward all these college bars and towns, is that I get to go party with these people as one of them. I'd be a senior in college if I had gone. All my boys are still up at UTK in Knoxville. And so I try to just write relatable songs to kind of where I'm at in life. What I did with my first EP is I really wrote towards that innocence and that, that college theme. And then we put out Creek Will Rise as kind of the start of the next chapter, because I think everything's maturing a little bit. So we got, this song and then two more lined up that we really wanted to turn the page on kind of growing up and want my fan base to kind of, get to grow up with me a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's important, man. Being conscious and cognizant of that at your age is pretty freaking amazing. I mean, it's very amazing compared to a lot of people that I talk to. You seem very well grounded and very self aware.
Thank you, man. Well, like I said, man, I just growing up in Nashville, I've been able to be around it, and I've been able to see the good and the bad, and I've had incredible mentors that have just spoken truth into me, and I've just been able to see it all and get to see, kind of how I want to do this, and I make a lot of mistakes, and there's
And we all do, man.
yeah, I got you know, like I said, we've had to fire people, and I've gotten in trouble, and I've all these things, but I try to be conscious of like, all right, I'm looking at now and I'm looking at the next song, but also where do I want to be in 10 years, and how am I going to get to headline in Bridgestone Arena in 5 years? You know what I mean? And so just having the right team around me is the biggest part of that.
That's a big part of it. I made a lot of mistakes early on, man, not realizing the ramifications of that, and consistency and getting a good team early on and being able to hold them together for a lengthy period of time can be very, very rewarding if you're able to navigate that water like that, like a long-term publicist and a long-term management company, and being able to stay with a label for a long time. I mean, those things are more relevant than you realize they are, and their cohesiveness and the way that they work together for the longevity of your career is invaluable.
Well, it's just like our job is to create and to be entertainers and to take care of, our art. And if we don't have the people around us that allow us the liberty to do that, and we gotta, we're not able just to like sit back and trust that they're doing what they need to do, man. That's living hell. Here's a question for you: when you look, because the landscape of what it means to be an artist, especially a new artist, has just changed even in the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Drastically. But do you look at the kind of the new weight that are put on, or expectations that are put on kind of new artists with just social media and TikTok, and like, do you look at that and just go, thank God I wasn't coming up in that time?
I just think it's a lot harder to become a mainstream successful artist with radio now than it used to be.
100%.
And there are a lot of other tools. There are ways to reach your audience, but I just think the label scenario has changed. Distribution and album sales have changed. You don't have the revenue stream that you used to have. The physical goods are almost non-existent now. Everything's on a streaming platform. It's downloaded, all that stuff. It's just, there used to be a structure to it.
There's a formula before.
You release a single, you work it, it goes up the charts, you take it as far as you can go, you give it a burn-off period, you release another single. You get to feel the experience with your audience when it's going. Nowadays, I had a 30th anniversary record, and we dropped 3 albums in 1 year, and we just threw stuff out every few weeks.
Yep.
Even if something does have the ability to impact, you don't feel it the same way. It's not the same scenario, and there's so much pressure to do all the extracurricular stuff. It's not just about writing and recording a great song. You've got to be a social media star. You've got to do all your TikTok stuff every day. You've got this whole list of stuff that you've got to do all the time. I just and really and truly, when I broke, man, I was by the time I got to the end of the 90s, man, I had a body of work, man. We were getting 4 singles a year. I mean,
100%.
And so you're able to build a catalog up that you can work off the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it might take a year.
One a year
on a single. And so really and truly, at the end of a 10-year period, if you're getting a single a year, do you really have a great body of work that you can tour off with the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And if you don't have 1 or 2 of them that really hits hard, you might not even get 5 years.
Totally.
So the labels completely control the scenario now, and I hate that. It's like it's so much less about the artist now than what it used to be. And I think it should all back in the day, if you think about the 90s, and I know you weren't even born yet. But I mean, when guys like I came out, and Chestnut and Joe Diffie and Tracy Bird and John Anderson had his resurgence, everybody had their own spot, man. And there was enough to go around for everybody. Even songwriters were getting album cuts and making a great living off of it. The music industry, everybody was sharing in the wealth. Everybody was getting a piece of the pie. And there's not as much of that going on nowadays.
On that, man, I'll tell you my biggest dream when I look at what do I want to do in this town? And it's like, man, what I care about is songwriters. And I care about bringing the quality back to songwriters in this town because songwriters are the heartbeat of this town, and they are what this whole industry revolves around. And so when I look at my career, it's like goal number one is, you know, when I'm able to establish a successful career, and it comes to getting out of that my first record deal, is when we re-sign, man. I'm going back to the label and I'm saying we're going this many points, and these go to the songwriters forever wrote every song that I cut. Whether that's, 20, 25, it's like whenever I cut a song, every songwriter gets a piece of that. And I think in Nashville that'll elevate, because here's what happens in that. It creates demand to where, creates competition to where if a songwriter knows, Rhett Akins knows, that when Connor Smith cuts a song, whether it goes to radio or not, he has 5 points on that record because they're paying money. But all the money's going to the labels. So everybody yells at Spotify and Apple Music and all this that they're not paying songwriters. They're paying the money. It's all just going to the record labels. So it's like we need to take that money, the ownership of the master's money, we need to be giving that to songwriters. So, like I was saying about competition, when those things shift and I can start really, staking points in my masters on a record deal, it's like when the songwriter knows that if they get a song to me, they get 5 points versus, then I get first right of refusal on the best songs in Nashville. And so I think it would really raise, I would hope and pray that it would really raise the standard for other artists to start doing that, because I think that's how we get songwriters paid again. Because, man, there's money to be made and there's money going out, and it needs to get in the songwriters' hands because they are the heartbeat of this town. And without, man, these songwriters that are the most brilliant people.
Oh, the last true American poets in this country.
They are the most brilliant people.
They are.
And I respect them so much, man. It has been you want to talk about every, great moment I've got to experience so far. The greatest moments for me is always when I got to walk into a room for the first time with a person that I studied since I was 6 years old and how they were writing songs, and we started writing songs together. And it's like, so when I look at like the bigger landscape of this town, man, I want to do things like that. I want to really kind of change the way deals are done and change the way that songwriters get paid, and just little things like that, man, that I really think would matter more than, me worrying about how many radio hits I can get.
Well, it all fits together. I mean, as you look at the picture of what your career is, man, it's a tapestry of all these different things that are a collage, more or less, of all these pieces that are who you are as a person, as a human being, as a business person, and a spiritual person. It's a collection of all those things, man, that make up who you are. And at the end of your life, you look back over it, and man, it should say something about the character of who you are.
You hope so. But it's a daily decision, Just wake up every day.
And sometimes I don't make the best decisions.
Me too, man.
I mean, shoot, man.
All of us.
You got to admit, you get in this business because you have to have a little arrogance to do it. You have to have a little cockiness.
You got to be cocky. Like,
you got to have that.
You think you can do this, you have to believe to a certain degree you're special.
Absolutely. Without that, you'll never be successful. People will run all over you if you don't have that sense of I hate to say the word entitlement, but I always believed I was destined.
Totally.
I believed I was destined since I was a little child.
Same.
Nobody ever deterred me from it. No matter what anybody said, I always believed it.
100%. Yeah, I've never questioned anything.
Yep, I've always believed God's had His hand on me since I was a small child, man.
Totally.
Just part of it.
100%.
So, where do you feel like the next 5 years? Where do you plan on going the next 5 years? Plan on headlining stuff? I mean, you still don't. You're not with a major yet, are you?
I'm with Big Machine.
You're Big Machine. Okay. So are you with that whole conglomerate over there with Craig and no, that's
Big Lab. That's Big Lab.
So Borchetta's gone.
Borchetta's still there.
Borchetta's still there.
I mean, they sold their company, but he's still running it.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we're signed over there. I mean, like I said, I got signed right out of high school, over there. And, man,
you just living off that Taylor Swift money is all you're doing.
Hey, listen, man, someone has to. Someone has to. I wish I was. But man, I'm just steadfast, dead set on getting my first song at radio going. So we've had 2 singles already, and they haven't cared yet. But we got this new song going, "Creek Will Rise," that radio's reacting to in a way that I haven't seen yet. So we're feeling good about that. But go back to songwriters, man. I mean, the truth is that we haven't had the radio hit, but we've had streaming hits. I got, first song went gold last week, and was from streaming, and then a song called "I Hate Alabama." That was a real viral hit. And so we have a fan base, and it's been cool to get out there and see.
We all feel your pain with that too.
Hey, come on now.
Except Lindsay right there. She can't help it. She grew up in Alabama.
But when we've been on these college tours, and man, it's just cool to see fans showing up, and so it's just like, keep going that. But as a guy who loves songwriters and know that radio is how songwriters get paid, man, I gotta get this music going on radio. So we're playing every radio show that they'll let us in the doors of, and so that's a big goal this year. And then I think 5 years, just continuing to build. Those bigger picture things of just all those little goals of direct supporting a tour and then headlining my own tour, and just keep it going, man. Keep building what we got.
How much time do you spend a week doing social media?
Not much.
Not really. So you're really just focused on radio.
Man, I participate, but I just made a decision pretty early on that I said, selling my soul on social media, I'd rather be a songwriter than do that. And so I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to do it in a way that, because I'll be honest with you, man, I think there's a lot of people, and sometimes it works for a little bit, but there's a lot of people that sacrifice their brand for numbers on social media.
Amen.
And I think when you put that into a decade, I think you'll see how that turns out. And I'm worried about getting people at the doors of my shows, and that's it. And so there's a role for social media to play, but when you're gonna tell me that me spending a day doing TikToks is more important than me spending a day trying to write a great song, I'm just gonna disagree with you. So my brother's my videographer and kind of my social visionary, as you say. Did my music video, done a few of my music videos, and so he helps me out a little bit to where we can make good stuff, and so I try to stay consistent. But man, I'm not begging for likes or nothing, and so I don't really spend too much time thinking about it.
That's good. I think too many people are wrapped up in all that stuff. I'm glad to know that there's somebody out there that ain't falling prey to that. Is your generation starting to turn off of it from a little bit? You think people are waking up some, or no?
I don't think they're there yet, but I think that I think there's a healthy way to do it. I think social media as a whole is just completely toxic.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's awful mentally. Like, I just deleted TikTok because I just said I'm not a better person with this on my phone. Like, I just waste time and whatever. So I deleted it for like 6 months, and
it shortens your attention span for sure.
Oh, totally.
And that's one of the reasons that I started doing the podcast, because I didn't want to do things that I wasn't comfortable with, the stupid things and all the silly crap. I would rather do something of substance and have a conversation with somebody and feed it from another direction than chase something that I'm not comfortable with, because that's not me.
Well, and you look at what we were talking about, it's like those Christopherson songs, those Dean Dillon songs, those songs aren't going to go viral on TikTok.
Shit, no.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I would rather spend a day trying to be a better songwriter and write and make great art than worry about what 15 seconds I could write that's hooky enough, to get a million views. And I've just made the decision that, in the long term, like, I would rather not spend my life worrying about how many views I got on TikTok that day.
And I don't hold anything against anybody that does.
No, and not at all. Like, a lot of
it's a tool.
It's an art too. Like, there are people that are great at that, and there are people making a living off that, and like, great to you. Like, participating with a phone camera like that is like a whole other art and talent in and of itself that some people have and some people don't. Like I said, in the same way that I tried to get great at guitar and just did it because I wanted to write songs. That's just kind of how I view social media a little bit.
What's your off stage outlets, man? You hunter, you fish, what do you do?
Yeah, I started hunting probably 4 years ago. I didn't grow up hunting, and so just recently got into it. And my family's got some property out in Lever's Fork, Tennessee.
Yeah,
and so I'll go out there and hunt when I can. I mean, I'm not home much. And so that's a big thing. Just being alone, being in the woods, being by a fire, man. That's kind of where I find my peace. So anytime that I can, I'll try to go get out in the woods and just hear some stillness and get to relax for a little bit.
That's pretty awesome, man. Yeah, I still try to do it too. We got a group of us. We try to kayak. We hadn't been kayaking in a while. We need to get our kayak shit back together, man.
Fishing, man.
Well, next time I'm in town, I'm just gonna drive out here and sit by your pond out there, and that'll
Yeah.
be my relaxing.
They're working on. They're dressing the pond. I had a bunch of rock and stuff brought in. I'm getting ready to restock everything.
Okay.
I like the last 2 years, man. I'd stocked this thing up when we built our house back in '07, and I built that big pond, and I had loaded it up with channel cat. Man, I had channel cat all over the place. About 2 years ago, they started disappearing. Because I had a big tub of dog food. I'd go down there and throw dog food out, and they'd just kind of boil it up. Man, I had catfish all over the place, and all of a sudden my catfish were gone. I couldn't figure out what it was. I got a freshwater otter that got in my pond, and I started looking up otters. Their primary source of food, they love catfish.
Really?
And one otter will eat 5 to 7 pounds of fish a day. It destroyed my entire population. It ate all.
Did you know that thing was in there?
And not till after they were all gone.
Oh my!
Yeah.
gosh.
So I've got tons of sunfish. So as soon as they get done doing the stuff down there, I'm fixing to load it up with largemouth. I'm fixing
That's
to stock
crazy.
that sucker up. That way I can go out there and catch me some bass.
How big is that pond? About acre?
Yeah, maybe a little acre and a half. It's pretty good size. And I had it built when I had two. So I think it goes down to like 15 foot down at the dam. And then I had 2 big tanks dug in that go down deeper than 20 foot. That way I can set crappie nests down in there. So
Well, hey, just let me know.
yeah, it's all good.
Just let me know when
We
those
got
things are in there.
There's times I get up in the morning, man. I can see there'll be 20 turkey in the front yard. There'll be deer all over the front yard, man. I got binoculars sitting right there by the front window. I come out here and watch the animals in the morning.
So what's your favorite thing? Is it still playing those shows? Is it
Oh, I'm a workaholic, man.
Totally.
I really am. My whole world revolves around touring. I mean,
Really?
I work all the time. I block time for the family. I love to travel. We're taking the family to Italy in the summer. I like going overseas. I usually take a couple of hunting trips a year. I like to bird hunt. I like to deer hunt.
how many shows are you playing this year? Like a year?
We'll probably do about 85.
Wow.
Yeah, that's last year we did like 95, and that was
Wow.
more than I've done in a long time. The first year I was on the road, I did 289 shows.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like insane. I never want to do anything. I don't want. That's. But all I wanted to do when I started was I just want to sing. Just didn't
Totally.
care. Just book it. I'll stay on the bus. I lived on the bus. I mean, I don't think I got off the bus that first year.
So were you did you move up here? Like, were you already writing before you moved up to?
Oh man, dude, I wrote my first song when I was 4.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you were
so I mean,
same thing.
I grew up watching Glenn Campbell on TV and listening to Charlie Pride and Kenny Rogers.
Those
Man.
all love it.
I was ate up with country music from birth.
Yeah.
My mother told me that when she was pregnant with me, she listened to Loretta Lynn all the time. She was very happy. Things were good in the marriage and everything. And so if I would have been born a girl, she was going to name me Loretta Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
So I was stuck with it from birth.
Totally.
Just like you, man. It's always been that thing.
Totally.
It's always been there in my
It's just-
soul. I've just had it since I came into the world, man. I always understood structure and songs and
Exactly.
and just I mean, I remember being 7 or 8 years old and listening to heartbreak songs and crying because I just got wrapped
wow.
up in the emotion. Didn't understand about love and heartbreak or any of that, but I understood the emotion of it, and it always mesmerized me. I was
Wow.
always just consumed with it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And there's not a lot of people that feel that way. I mean, that's when God touches you. I really
Well, that's
believe that.
that's the difference. I think a lot of times is there's a lot of people who move up here to because they want the glory of standing on a stage or the fame or whatever. It's like, man, if I got dropped from my record label, if I got banned from Nashville in country music, I would still have to write songs.
I understand.
Like, it's just a part of who I am and how I process the world is in writing songs. And so, I mean, if I'm gonna be that addicted to it, I might as well try to make money from it.
Yeah, and it's a great blessing, and to be able to
Absolutely.
really touch people with words and be able to connect with people on that level is a very special thing. It's a true American art form, man. There's nothing else like it. It's
Hey,
very
man.
satisfying.
Just trying to keep it alive.
Brother, it's been a pleasure visiting
And
with
thanks
you.
for having me, man.
Thank you so much, man. Much respect, man.
Thank you, man. You too.
Very nice
Thanks.
getting to know you. Where's all your socials? Where can people find you
Yeah,
at?
Connor Smith Music for pretty much everything. It's CONNER on Connor. And Connorsmithmusic.com for all the tour dates this year.
have a good tour out there this summer, man. Look forward to maybe catching up again next year and kind of see where you're at.
I love that, man. Thank you, man.
Connor Smith.